Welcome to News Inside. I'm An Jang-hyun. Let's welcome back our panelists. Professor Shin Sang-hyuk is with us once again.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Well, same to you.
And Professor Lee Young-um joins us again. Happy New Year to you as well.
Happy New Year to you too.
Before we get started, here's a look at this week's 60-second news update.
During the 2016 New Year's speech, President Park clearly stated her intentions to accelerate structural reforms in 4 major sectors this year. The government has pushed ahead to complete the 3-year economic innovation plan and to ensure a creative economy initiative. There are also plans to strengthen and prepare national security, improve government administration, and to spark job creation. Plans to establish the nation's first foreign for-profit hospital has been approved by the Korean government. The Greenland International Hospital, which is owned by China's Greenland Group, is being fully supported by the government. The only step left for them is to obtain Jeju Island's approval. The Data Privacy Reform Law for stricter data privacy rules has been passed in the European Union. The main EU countries are working towards strengthening regulations in order to protect people's personal information and to safeguard businesses as well. In response to this, the Korean government will form its own improvement plan for the protection of personal data.
The EU looks set to approve a set of data protection measures, including strict requirements for data protection compliance and heavy fines for breaches. Could you tell us what this reform entails?
Yes, the reform law include several major changes. The first one is this reform law will require internet companies not only to give users great information on how they use the informations, but to get the consent, their consent to use the information. And in fact, this law, according to this law, the age of contents was raised from 13 years to 16 years, and also for the younger users, until up to 12 years old, the internet company should get the consent of their parents. The another change which we can find from the new law, actually this law aims to deter companies from hiding so-called cyber attacks, which means that if a company committed their data breaches, this will need to be altered to the national authority within 72 years. So this is the one change. Well, we can say it has been strengthened by the new law. And if there is a failure to disclose the information, actually there is, as I said before, there's huge fine. Well, this fine is up to 4% of the total revenue.
Annual revenue, yes.
So this is very huge one. Well, when you look at consider the giant internet companies such as Google or Facebook, whatever, maybe the fine can be reached to up to several $1 billion. So this is really a huge fine, isn't it?
So how will this affect Korea? It could be a source of concern for Korean companies that are doing business in the EU market.
Yes, not just the Korean companies, but for any international companies doing business with the EU market, because, well, first of all, the General Data Protection Resolution, which is short for GDPR, is a law that can be described as an omnibus data protection law for the 28 European countries. The data protection measures used by the European countries was called a data protection directive that was instituted about 20 years ago, which was not a mandatory law. And As the years has passed, with the increased amount of data collected by the various actions of the individual on the internet, coupled with the use of mobile phones, and now these days with the Internet of Things data, I mean, the enormous amount of personal data that is collected by these companies, huge companies like Google, Facebook, and Apple and Microsoft, they have tremendous potential to affect a variety of people's lives. And so thus far, some of these European countries have been trying to deal with this change by using their judicial system. They have brought antitrust lawsuits against Google, privacy law, privacy violations against Facebook, and so on. And they have tried to fine these companies. All at the same time, the EU was trying to come up with a unified law that would apply to all of the European countries, and this is the GDPR. Now, what has changed from the previous directive? First of all, the territorial scope has changed. Companies that are doing business in Europe, even though they are based in countries outside of Europe, are now subject to this law. Because the law says that if you're doing business here and if you are handling privacy information of European citizens, you need to comply to this law.
So, for example, a Korean company doing business in Europe will not be able to transfer their clients' data to the Korean headquarters here.
Exactly. The data needs to stay there. In addition to the increased fines for violations and data breach notifications that Professor Shin mentioned, there's also a right to erasure. For example, if Facebook has my data and I decide to stop using Facebook, I can request Facebook to delete all of my personal data. That's one. And yes, they had that before, but the new element that was introduced in this new measure is that the companies, if they had made the data public, now have to send notice to people that have used that public data to delete private information about the individual that had requested the deletion of data. And so this is an extremely overarching rule. And so Korean companies have to be extremely careful, otherwise, there's the possibility of heavy fines.
Professor Lee briefly mentioned right to erasure, also called right to be forgotten, and that is one of the core issues in this new legislation. I'm wondering if the law is clear enough, though, on who has RTBF obligations. For example, we know that search engines such as Google's are actual controllers, data controllers, and they have the obligations for RTBF. But hosting platforms like Facebook or Twitter, for example, if my friend posted a picture of me on Facebook, and I asked Facebook to take the picture down, will that work? Will they have the obligation?
Well, basically, the data collected regarding an individual is stored in a company's database in the cloud. And it's the same for Google, it's the same for Facebook. Facebook has their own servers, Google has their own enormous town of servers. So each company that collects individual data about a person, it can be the like button on the Facebook, posting their actual postings, their digital footprint, which pages they linked to. They are all private and personal information about that person's internet behavior, and that's all data. So it would apply to all of these companies. And so actually this data protection law seems to be geared, yes, it's very overarching, and it's meant for all of the countries and all the other countries, but it seems that, considering the kind of lawsuits against certain companies, it seems that there was an economic motive among the European countries against the huge global IT companies like Google and Facebook and Microsoft, And so that is what they seem to be focusing on. And that is why in October of 2015, the US and EU had a pact called a safe harbor law, which allowed private information, data transfer of European citizens to the US servers. And now, on October, early October, they said that they revoked that pact, and so they ended the pact. Of course, in November, they had another agreement that allowed a conditional transfer, but it is expected to, these countries, these companies, these US companies are going to have to find a way of keeping the private information about European citizens in Europe in the future, because the law takes effect at the end of 2017.
There could be economic consequences to strict data control, though. Some say too much restriction can actually hinder the growth of the IT industry.
Well, the information, we are living in an era of information now. I think the personal information are regarded as one of the most important assets for business activities. So if the strict control of the personal data means for the business enterprises is they will have additional burden to do business activities, more difficulties. So the companies try to develop the way how to make up those kind of difficulties by developing new technologies or by developing newer systematic approaches. But I think it's not easy though, because that the lifespan of the technologies has been shortened dramatically. It requires more huge amount of money and longer investment and longer efforts. Well, considering all of this, yes, as you pointed out, the strict control of the personal data can be interpreted as one of the negative factors for the business entities, I think.
So the Korean government is trying to keep in line with the EU reform. Where do we stand at the moment, though? Are we closer to the relatively lax US model or the very strict EU model?
Well, we have a stricter model than the U.S. We have laws requiring companies to delete personal data, or restricting companies from keeping personal data for an extended period of time. And so I guess we could say that we are closer to the EU model, but we have to pass their sort of inspection. The European Commission has given this adequate ruling to certain countries, about 12, including recently the US, New Zealand, Canada, Switzerland, or some of the countries.
So in other words, Korea has to pass the EU standards for data protection.
And so the Korean company has started this project to go through ask for the EC to give the adequate ruling for the country of Korea, but it's going to take a while. They say that preparations will take approximately 2 years. And so around the end of 2017, Korea expects to apply for this new ruling or assessment.
In fact, yes, as Professor Lee explained, Korea has formally established as one of toughest jurisdiction for data privacy compliances in the world. We have enough reason. According to the report, about 80% Koreans have experienced theft of their personal details, even including President Park Geun-hye. And then recently, it was happening in 2014 at the 3 credit card companies. They sold or whatever, about 20 million Korean personal accounts were exposed to the so-called the person who want to seek for personal data. I think because of these kind of circumstances we have, the Korean government tried to control the private data, the informations actually, and so Korea has the Personal Information Protection Act and the IT Network Act. Actually, this is the the entity regulates the collection and use of the personal data in Korea. And on the top of that, in response to the European Union's new reformed the law, the Korean Communications Commission, which is the top national organization, dealing with telecommunication, international internet regulator. Actually, they established a task force to study about the potential, rights to be forgotten reform. I think so. As we discussed so far, Korea has made every effort to control the data privacy regulations for over the last decade.
Data protection is something that affects and concerns us all. Let's keep an eye on the EU reform and figure out how it can be applied to our advantage. There are several bills pending at the National Assembly aimed at fostering a mature culture of donation, but they are also a source of debate. Will they encourage more donations, or will they lead to tax evasions? Let's put this question to our panelists. So among these bills, one has to do with revising the income tax law to raise tax deduction rates on donations. And that bill has been agreed upon by both the ruling and opposition parties. Professor Shin, would you please explain the content of this bill?
Yes, there was the revision in 2013. So the law applied until the end of 2014, but this year, there is another revision. I think the contents of the new bill for the activation of the donating will change the criteria amount distinguishing the large donations and small donations. According to the pre-existing law, the criteria amount was 30 million won. And then if some a individual donate the less than 30 million won, and actually the tax reduction rate applied to this amount of the donation was only 15%. And the above more than 30 million won donation, the applied tax reduction rate was 25%. But this new law increased the tax reduction rate by 5%, which means they apply the 30% tax reduction rate to the donation more than 30 million won. But actually this criteria amount also reduced from 30 million won to 20 million won.
Right.
So this is the changes of the new bill. But then we have to think about why they changed. Well, as I said before, in 2013, there was a revision of the income tax law. Before 2013, actually, the government used the tax, and they determined the tax reduction rate considering total earnings of the individual. So, as you know, the Korea has a sliding scheme for the earnings. I mean, in case of income tax, if someone makes more than 88 million won per year, the income tax rate was about 38%. So if he or she donates about 100 won, well, at the time they could get the 38% tax reductions. So that was the system at the time. But according to the new tax revision in 2013, as I said before, regardless of the incomes of the individual, the government decide the tax reduction rate responding to considering the total amount of donation. So this system actually has been understood not favorable for large donations. So in fact, when you look at the data, showing the amount of donation, Since the changes of this law, the total amount of the donation reduced dramatically, and the number of the people who donated the money also reduced dramatically. If I give the data, when you compare the number of who makes donation among the salary workers for 9 months from January to September 2015, comparing with the same period in 2014, the number reduced by 42%. So because these kind of reduction, the total number of the person who make the donation and then total donated amount of money, the Korean government the change the system to activate the donating in Korea.
So obviously this will encourage more donations from high-income earners. But what's the argument against it?
Yes, there are several arguments about this issue. In fact, to pay tax to nation is also a donation to the country. So some experts said that we don't have to think about the tax from the donation. So this is part of donation. And the another one is the so-called fairness in the tax reduction. Well, some experts said that we cannot deduct tax only for the the person who donate money. We have to deduct the tax rate for the person who pay a huge amount of money for their treatment at hospital, those kind of things. But the one point which I want to underline is those money, spent for their treatment and hospital, that's the money for themselves. But the donation is the money for the others. So we cannot think about those arguments from only one perspective. So we have to think about this issue from more diverse perspectives.
Well, from people who don't have large money to donate and get tax deductions, I guess it seems a little unfair that people with high income can donate and get away with big tax reductions.
Yes, in terms of tax reductions, I think you would have to try to focus on what the purpose of the tax deductions for the donations are. If the purpose is to encourage more donations, then you would go with the tax reduction system. But if the purpose is to ensure the equity in taxing, then you would go to the previous measure. But I think in terms of donations and tax reductions themselves, in this case, I think most people agree that it would be better to encourage more donations.
Well, we've heard that Mark Zuckerberg and his wife decided to donate 99% of their Facebook shares to charity. Some say donations of this scale will never be seen in Korea. What do you think? Why is that?
Yes, considering, there are two main reasons why we cannot see such a huge donations in Korea. First one is the so-called culture of donation. Well, according to the data, out of total donations made by Koreans, 70% donations come from the corporations. Only 30% come from individuals. And then this is very different figures from the advanced countries such as USA and European countries. And the reason why I think that actually the culture of donating in Korea is not matured as much as the other advanced economies. Of course, we do not have a long history in the donations, but to make a long story short, certainly we have shorter and then not very well matured the environment for donation. And the second one is, in fact, as we discussed already, legal environments for the donations or to make the large donations is not well prepared comparing with advanced the countries. Let me give an example. I read an article several years ago. He was a professor at KAIST, And then he had his company, see, he made a fortune. He donated about 20 billion won, whole money which he had. He donated this money to his, the university from which he graduated. And then he got the...
he got taxed. That same amount.
Yes, no, more than that, because of the penalties and the fines, plus the money which you have to pay in the form of the tax. So I think who will consider make such a huge, large donations? When we look at this, read this article, personally, I think that why I have to donate. You know what I mean? I think those kind of systems should be changed or improved. Otherwise, we cannot see the large donations as we can see in foreign countries.
There's also concern that this law could be misused as a tool for tax evasion. What do you think?
Yes, I think there is every possibility of that. If we just consider the income tax and the tax deduction in the income tax, I think it would be better to encourage more donations. But because of the deficiency in the legal system with regard to other types of taxes, that is why the KAIST professor had to, pay so much. But there is a possibility of these big companies setting up these public trust funds or public trust institutions and use it as a tool for tax evasion. So having their...
To evade inheritance tax, for example, right?
Right, exactly. So if their son takes control of the public trust, then it is in fact a tax haven. And so we need to try to establish laws to stop that aspect. But overall, I think Korea still needs to try to develop a better sort of a donation culture.
Well, the intentions are all well and good, but the desired effects are obviously not being achieved as of yet. Let's hope for a wise solution that will indeed foster a culture of giving and sharing. The number of hidden camera crimes is on the rise. The media, of course, is always quick to report these crimes. Let's examine whether there's a problem in which the media deals with these stories, and if there is, what can be done about it. So let's first take a look at how hidden camera crimes are reported by the media. Professor Lee, what sort of trends have you noticed?
Well, let me take an example of a voyeuristic video that emerged last August of the changing room or
women's
the shower,
locker,
right, women's
at
locker,
a swimming pool,
right, at a swimming pool. There seemed to be a formula for reporting that story. So first of all, they would describe what the crime was, and then second, they would describe the video content. Third, they would try to explain how it was filmed, even going into technical details, sometimes reenacting the video taping of the scene. And then it would end by saying, stating vaguely that it is very difficult to prevent such a crime. And so if you look at that, we can see several serious issues with that type of reporting, because most of the news focused on what. It didn't focus on the problem itself or the major sort of theme of the crime. And so, first of all, the stories were unnecessarily sensationalistic. The titles were sensational. These stories were displayed in a prominent space, the front pages, the headlines, and so it was unnecessary. Second, detailed information about the crime was was given. And so, I mean, what was shown, what was filmed? I mean, they had, the film was blurred, the footage was blurred, but they showed what was filmed. So you could kind of tell what was filmed. And that, okay, so that was unnecessary. If you look at the reporting of these hidden camera stories, for example, in the US, you don't see detailed descriptions of what was filmed. Third, because the focus was on what, they didn't really focus on the problem itself. Yes, they did give, many of them gave statistical information about the increase in hidden camera crimes, but that was it. I mean, they didn't try to analyze why the increase was occurring. Oh, they didn't try to speculate on the ramifications of the incident on the victims. They didn't try to look ahead into trying to cope with the situation, either socially or structurally or legally. And so the in-depth analysis of the problem itself was lacking. And many times, these stories, if there is video, it will be shown. Similar stories that did not have video did not have nearly as much coverage. And so there are several, I mean, real huge problems.
I've seen reports where journalists are actually going out, buying these hidden cameras, showing how small they are, how unnoticeable they are, attaching them as a button or on their eyeglasses to show people that there are hidden cameras that are like that available. So be careful. But then I'm concerned that it could also encourage more people to go out and buy those cameras and commit copycat crimes.
Yes, I think, well, as you pointed out, we can buy any devices whenever we want to buy. I mean, if you have money. So I think, you know, the aspect we have to focus on is this side. I mean, the young people who do not have the matured so-called principles in their mind, well, they can be inclined to so-called sensationalism in some sense. So without the maturity in their mind, well, by having a chance to get access to those kind of so-called dangerous sources, well, we cannot prevent them from being safe from those kind of attractiveness. So I think that, you know, the government should have to control and the accessibility of those kind of devices, well, depending on the ages or depending on their background or whatever. I think we should make such a kind of criteria to prevent people from getting access to or trapping into those kind of crimes. I think that is one of the way the government should have to prepare in advance, I think.
When the media pays too much attention to the who's and how's, we can't help but worry about secondary victimization as well.
Yes, that is why, I mean, not just in this hidden camera story, but in any story that involves the private lives of the person, I mean, these stories are in effect a violation of the person's privacy as well as even human dignity. And in stories like that, if the news reports are too detailed, they have the, I mean, there's a danger of making the audience become an accomplice to a second-hand voyeurism. So, I mean, it could be re-victimizing the victim. So that's something that the media should really be careful of.
Yeah, the media keeps insisting on people's right to know, but ultimately isn't it to record more views and hits?
But they do not, I mean, consider the rights of the victims, as Professor Lee pointed out. I mean, you know, they put the first priority on the sensationalism in some sense. So I think we should have to make the people consider so-called the rights of the victims more. I think it's needed for us on the long-term basis. Otherwise, you know, we could expose to the reports without appropriate guidelines, so-called. I think that will be a kind of another source of the different types of the problems in the future, I think.
This is bordering on yellow journalism.
Yes.
Why does this happen? What happened to journalistic integrity?
Exactly. I mean, that is what we need to consider when we are talking about these type of news reports. Journalistic ethics, journalistic integrity, journalistic responsibility. These, yes, I mean, what does journalists do? They gather information, they report the information, but the information has to try to be complete to be able to enable the audience to get a comprehensive understanding of the story. But in this case, they seem to focus only on the interesting facts. And so, I mean, the audience cannot go even further to gain knowledge or, and maybe the ultimate goal of the journalist being contributing to the betterment of mankind or the society will not be possible.
It seems stricter journalistic principles and ethics are needed, especially when it comes to reporting crimes of suggestive or sexual nature. What can be done?
Well, exactly same idea with Professor Lee. And without the focusing on the real problem itself, just try to draw your attention by reporting some fact, not fact. I mean, the part of the facts based on sensationalism. I think we cannot find the solution to solve the problem themselves. Also, we cannot avoid another round of the difficulties in the future in our society.
Shouldn't journalists and news editors also take it upon themselves to practice better ethics?
Yes, exactly. And actually there are guidelines on reporting sexual abuse stories. But actually I would like to discuss these type of human privacy violations or human integrity related stories. One of the examples that we can see is in Finland with regard to suicide, because Finland used to have one of the highest rates of suicide. And so the government started this project for the suicide prevention, or National Suicide Prevention Project. And in that was included guidelines for the media on how to report suicide stories. And some of these guidelines apply to hidden cameras situations as well, I think. The first one, the most prominent don't do is avoid disclosing the method and location of the suicide. So don't give so much information. That is not, so these are some of the principles that the Korean media personnel need to really take into consideration, and also avoid using explicit pictures. You don't need to show the film itself. It is a violation on the victim. So, so the third, what I think is prominent is to respect the feelings of the people that are affected. And so if you really respect the feelings of the victims, you cannot show that.
In fact, I think the Korean National Human Rights Commission has similar recommendations for reporting on these crimes, but they're just suggestions or recommendations, right? They're not legally binding.
I think, well, that is a very important point, actually. If somebody suggests a good idea, I think the government or whatever the entity which is in the position to make it realize it in the form of the policies, they should open their mind and they should hear the voices from the others. And then if they can get them some more informations about the policies, whatever, they should be ready to make it or realize it as a policy. Those kind of efforts is absolutely needed for us to solve this problem, I think.
There is a fine line between people's right to know and protecting one's basic human rights. Let us hope we all remember that. Thank you very much, professors, for your insights today. That is all for this week's edition of News Inside. Thank you for watching. We will see you again next week.